Okay, so the product design process. We talk about things in design process like we're going to go through strategy, design, and some type of rollout stage. This covers things like research and discovery, our ideation process, to validating and prototyping, user testing, refinement, and controlled feature rollouts. This is an idealized process that I have probably been able to successfully go through from end to end on probably 5 projects my entire career. However, there is a lot of really good activities that we've done in some of these things, like doing requirements kickoffs and brainstorming, or doing lo-fi and hi-fi wireframing, even bringing those to user testing, trying to do usage analytics and setting up proper developer handoff. The idea that we can have an ideal design process instilled in product design is very difficult for companies that don't have a lot of design maturity. And design maturity is something that can be, I'd say we're kind of in a midpoint for design maturity. Companies understand that user experience is important. They don't understand how or what the actual benefits are fairly often. I know that's kind of subjective, and there are better ways to measure this that can be found online. But when we talk about what that looks like in terms of dual track agile, this is something where we talk about where we have 2 tracks of design going. We have all of this great UX theater that we're able to have activities and results and outcomes for various things that we do in user experience that help us inform how we're going to build the product. The other half of that is the actual production of the product or feature, where you're working on actively getting everything you've found out in the first part, getting it built and shipped in the second. So altogether, that looks like something where we got design thinking on one half or one end and lean product design on the other. We're talking about product definition all the way up until we can figure out what our problem is that we're solving, and then going all the way through product delivery on getting things that we can test and build and refine until we ship. If we take a look even closer, the product space that we have usually has a very well-defined core offer and a handful of auxiliary offers. So maybe you can buy things directly from our website, and then the auxiliary, maybe people can set up shops to where people can buy things. Based on the company's priorities, we may take that backlog of ideas that we have and run those through some discovery and validation. Things that fall out are things that we're going to revisit and feed our future design sprints. Then, as things start to bounce around through our product roadmap, we're going to take these ideas and do some discovery sprints. This is going to help us expand and understand that problem space through things like developing user stories and writing down the metrics that we want to achieve. After we've also fully defined this problem, what we want to take a look at is what kind of ways that we might be able to solve this problem. We're going to take the design solution, we're going to explore it, build something where we can prototype and test and decide whether or not that works. If it doesn't, we really need to revisit that problem in our explorations and see if we've actually fully nailed down that. But if it does work, then we're going to place these items in the backlog now for our developer teams. Actually, hilariously, I need to spell that correctly. We'll have our developer backlog where we're actually able to start taking these things, breaking them up into the teams, and letting our teams sprint on these until we actually get it to launch. Then, based on that, we have our post-release metrics. Those are going to inform that feedback where we can either do iterative improvements or start working on new ideas and problems. After everything, we really want to make sure we have a team retrospective so that everything feeds our future design sprints. Cool. That is an absolutely great process. How the hell do you implement something like that? One of the things that I've found is that usually when it comes to talking about the makeup of our teams, is that we've kind of got this developer, designer, and product triangle here. Oftentimes, there's kind of an artificial wall between design and the developer product duos. This can be either because of siloed products, it can be because the design org is a separate function from the development org, or just for some reason you don't have great communication between design, development, and product. The other thing to think of is what these functions together, when they work together, are focused on. You have the designer and developers who are really focused on craft. They want to make sure that what they put out is the absolute best in terms of the actual function that they can do. Then we have things like the consumer needs, which is going to be a focus on design and product, trying to make sure that when we have a solution that is actually fitting the needs of the people that we're solving for. And then we have business here that fights for trying to make sure the stuff we make is performant, that it actually solves, actually brings in things that benefit the product or benefit the business. And each one of these is pulling tension across all of these functions to where the business really has to decide which of these they're going to prioritize. And you can kind of see the way this is done by how these teams are staffed. Oftentimes, you may have something that kind of looks like this, where you have a product owner or product manager. And I'm talking about the working teams, the ones that work on the actual features from the backlog. Not necessarily the people that are pushing vision and delegation to these product teams. So a product team could have anywhere between 5 to 15 developers, maybe more, maybe less. Maybe you have 2 designers. Maybe there is a product owner and a product manager or scrum master or something like that. Sometimes it's more staffed like this, where you kind of have a larger development team, some product owners, and designers that are farmed out to specific things that people are working on. This is just kind of a superfluous idea of how we staff some of these teams. So the biggest thing that I've found is that we really want to make sure that that communication barrier starts to become as good as possible. When we take a look at this ideal process, a lot of these things do happen. Like, there is a large idea backlog. Sometimes we do try to understand the problem. Like, oftentimes this is done through a product requirement doc or a PRD. And then that kind of jumps directly to the development teams, and then they come to design and they're like, hey, make this look nice. It's nobody's fault that the way that we've started doing things has been skipping some of these processes that that design really thinks makes great products. But if we really want people to care about that, what we need to start doing is bringing some of these functions together. So in team retrospectives, hopefully, I've seen it where team retrospectives are run with just development and product. Hopefully design is included in that function so they can help kind of guide what went wrong, what could do better, things that went well with their communication. And then over here, when they talk about discovery, validation, and search in this idea backlog, that we have product design and development all focused on trying to understand and empathize with these areas of the customer. So actually, I might take product design and development and put them here where we're all creating the backlog together. And then based on that, I know that design really has a good way to empathize with people as we go through discovery and validation. We can bring product into this. They're usually running this themselves if this is something that is happening. And having design within that function allows you to utilize the things that we've been taught in user experience design in understanding the holistic flow of things and looking for opportunities where things might connect, that we can expand upon this. The product roadmap, yes, that should be something that is defined by design function, product function, and development function. Now, this product could be feature. I don't care at this point, but essentially we're coming with ideas that we're going to test. Now, the discover and define phase, the product and design function here can really start driving some of these user stories. And then product development, how are we going to measure that? When we get to things like how might we's, this is where design can start running facilitation on specific design sprint things like how might we exercise or helping solve the solution on that. Development and design, we're going to start focusing on the mockups and flows. And even then, once we get that, we're going to do prototyping and testing through user testing sessions with our product owners. Then, once we're inside the actual development cycles, I see that I am missing some of these, but hopefully, if we can start involving people a lot earlier in this process, where you can see design, development, and product should be having great communication about all of this stuff leading up to when things actually start being worked on by development. There should be no surprise, no handoff, and no essentially no confusion on what or why we are building things. Things should already have been worked out to where we have a great MVP to build off of, and we know exactly what improvements we need to make to that. So maybe something like our sprint cycle, maybe we only need 2 sprints or 1 sprint in order to get something out and launched. Or maybe we even need less iteration. I see iterations pulled right off of here. Maybe we know enough out of the gate that we don't need to come back and iterate on something that we had to get a first version out. The last thing I'll share, and this is kind of focused around what I'm focused on next, is trying to understand the things that we do activity-wise that are dependent on the phase of the next thing. So you can see here that we have specific phases that we work on with things like preparation, planning, development. I'm trying to understand now what it actually looks like when we create some of these product requirement docs. When we go into wireframes or mid flows and stuff, these things like the wireframes feed the engineering documents and even go even further into like research and whatnot. These kind of things start to really tie together, like who's involved where and why, and what comes next within this process. So I do think dual track Agile is helpful as an ideal state, but there's a lot of maturity that an organization has to have in order to get something like this. Because if we take a look at this with things like feature kickoffs, requirement stocks, sketching out ideas with lo-fi wireframes and high-fidelity mockups, testing with our user base. That's all the same process, but there has to be a lot of infrastructure, processes, documentation, communication strategies, and team rituals, kind of a commitment to all of that allows you to achieve these things. So, dual track Agile, yes, try to study it, try to understand it, but I have a few other resources that I'll share with you as well, because I don't think every feature needs to run through this heavy-handed process. If we try to do that with literally everything, we're going to get laughed out of the room because things take too long, and then design loses their grasp on any of the progress that they've made in being included in this early stuff. So, in terms of trying to get that stuff together into stuff like this, I know a few people that talk about this is Jared Spool, when he talks about being beyond the UX tipping point. Andy Budd had a great message around design being in its midlife crisis. And then there's another thing where we talk about, or I say we, the person that shared it talks about their how to weigh the actual effort in a process like this that we should actually be giving some of these projects. So I'll share those as well, and hopefully that will be helpful for you. So cool.